professional level is very hard work, and I think I'm dedicated enough to work hard and try to be the best basketball player I can. And
when people hear the phrase "be like Mike," they usually think it means copying Michael Jordan's jump shot or wearing his shoes or trying to play basketball like him. But that was never the real message. MJ never became Michael Jordan because of a move, a shoe, or talent alone. He became Michael Jordan because of who he decided he was long before the world agreed. Before championships, before Nike, before Black Jesus, he had an identity. What Nike sold with "Be Like Mike" wasn't a sneaker. They sold an identity, a standard, to be the best, to show up every single day regardless of if anyone's watching. And here's the part most people miss. The lesson was never be Michael Jordan. It was to decide who you are first and then let your behavior catch up. And that's why identity is a thing that either cages you or is the most powerful tool you'll ever have. And this matters way more than just basketball, because every person you admire, every overnight success, every underdog story, all follows the same pattern. They were just the guy who chose an identity and refused to violate it. In this video, I want to show you why identity comes before discipline, and how most people are already trapped by an identity they didn't choose, and how you can use identity as a tool rather than letting it control you. Because if Be Like Mike taught us anything, it's that you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. So here's what I think about identity. Identity is not about who you wish you were. Identity is about what feels normal for you to do. Your identity sets a baseline for your behavior. It determines what feels easy, what feels uncomfortable, and what feels completely out of character. And that's why identity is so powerful, but it can also end up feeling like an absolute cage. Because once something is part of your identity, you don't need motivation to do it. You just do it. And the opposite is also true. Anything that sits outside of your identity comes with friction. Here's a simple example. Imagine someone trying to quit smoking gets offered a cigarette. One response is, I'm trying to quit. And that sounds responsible, but it keeps smoking inside their identity. They're still a smoker, just one that's resisting. Now compare that to the second person who is trying to quit. They get offered a cigarette and they say, I don't smoke. That's not willpower, that's an identity choice. They're not fighting temptation anymore. They're now just the type of person who doesn't do that. And this can apply to everything. Training, discipline, consistency, even how you show up in your relationships. Once something becomes who you are, your behavior starts to follow along automatically. Now, the way your identity actually changes is a lot more simple than most people think. Every action is a vote. A vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you train, that's a vote for the type of person who works out. When you follow through with something that you said you're going to do, that is a vote for being a reliable person. And when you don't, you're still voting, just in the other direction. Think about something basic like showering. Most people don't debate whether they're going to shower or not today. They just do it. Why? Because I shower every day is part of their identity. If you started skipping it regularly, something would feel off. Not because it's morally wrong to skip a shower, because it violates who you think you are. Because at the end of the day, you are what you repeatedly do. So identity isn't a cage by default. It only cages you when it's unconscious, when you inherit it instead of choosing it, when you randomly accrue a bunch of habits without thinking about it, like feeling like snacking every time you're on the couch, and then that becomes a habit, and then that's part of your identity, and you didn't choose that identity to just associate snacking with being on the couch. Instead, that is an identity that you inherited. But when you craft your identity deliberately, it becomes leverage. It can pull your behavior towards your goals instead of fighting against them. And that's why the first step of my blueprint isn't discipline, isn't motivation, isn't habits, it's identity. Because once you decide who you're becoming, the next action becomes dead obvious. Now, I'm not going to get you to just completely overhaul your life or anything like that. This is all just about clarity. Now, I have a simple 2-minute exercise that could genuinely put life on easy mode for you. So grab a pen and paper or your phone, notes, whatever, just something where you can write something down. Write down 3 words that describe how you currently show up most days. You don't need to overcomplicate this. This could be words like reliable, disciplined, inconsistent, distracted, reactive, focused, productive, uncertain, any of those. I'll give you just a moment to write those down. Now write down 1 habit that you repeat almost every day, good or bad. Now I want you to imagine a version of yourself 5 years from now that you really look up to and aspire to be. Now write down 3 words that describe that person. Again, that could be anything like discipline, calm, focus, focused, strong, confident, whatever. I'll let you write those down. And write one habit that person does almost every day. Now, you're probably noticing a gap between your two lists, but that gap is not a motivational problem at all. It's an identity gap. So regardless of how much difference or similarity you have, I just want you to circle one word that seems the most important or urgent for you to bridge. Okay, perfect. Now what we're gonna do is for the next 7 days, you are going to adopt one rule. I am the type of person who, and then you're gonna fill in whatever that one circle characteristic was. So for instance, I am the type of person who finishes what they start. Now your only job for the next week is to cast one vote each day for that identity. And that's all you need to do. And I know doing it for 7 days might sound pointless to you, but I want you to feel what it feels like each time you cast one of those votes or each time you don't, because then you will feel what it feels like to go against an identity you have intentionally set or to reinforce an identity that you have intentionally chosen. And that is the feeling I want you to get out of this. So if it sounds simple, it's because it is. What's hard to do is sticking to it without support, structure, and accountability. And that's why most people don't fail because they don't know what to do. It's because they don't reinforce who they're becoming or who they want to be. Here's the thing most people get wrong about identity. It's not about motivation, it's about standards. Michael Jordan didn't wake up every day feeling motivated. He just refused to violate who he believed he was. And that's the shift most people never make. They keep trying to feel like the person they want to become instead of acting in accordance with that identity every day. And if you're watching this thinking, yeah, but I'm not Michael Jordan, good. Because neither was he at the beginning. He was just a guy, but with an identity that demanded more from him than the world did. And so are you. If you don't choose an identity deliberately, you will live inside one by default that is not of your making. The only difference between those who drift through life and those who become the best in their field is whether or not they decided who they are, ensuring their actions reinforce who they want to be. This identity reset is the first step in my blueprint that I live by and I coach other people through. But everything else, discipline, structure, habits, all of that come after this. Because once you decide who you are, your next action becomes dead obvious. You don't need to be special, you just need to be deliberate.